Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Contact Exec Podcast. I'm here today with Gabe Guetta from Salus. I'm getting it right. I didn't want to put my
Nailed it.
we'll put that Texas accent on it, Salus. But I guess that's just what happens.
It's all good. Like I said, 50-50.
You got a 50-50 chance of getting it right, right? All
Yeah,
right. I like it.
exactly.
I got it. I got it. So I always ask this question when I get started out with folks. Gabe, you and I actually met very briefly at Procore Ground Break. You were talking to a lot of folks. I know everybody was, and so I just how in the world do you get into construction, and then also, and now you're in the safety part of safety software of construction. How does that happen for you? Right? Where does that start?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, 15 years ago, if you were to ask me what my career looks like 25 years from now or 10 years from now, you could have chosen 75 different things and it would have never been this. Um, so, I don't have a background in safety. I don't have a background in software. Um, but I do have a background in construction. So out of high school, barely graduated, didn't know what to do with my life, which is pretty typical for anyone coming out of high school, I would say, whether they want to admit it or not. I decided to travel, went to Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, trying to figure out who I was. Came back, dove right into construction. My dad's in construction, my uncle was in construction. I very familiar with the space. It really aligns with my personality and the way I learn. And so I went in as a laborer and I just kind of fell in love with the fact that I could I could learn with my hands through experience. I was out of a classroom setting where I felt like I was just constantly,
Yeah.
I don't know, hitting my head against the wall, feeling like I was not smart. And then all of a sudden I'm in this world where like, no, there's a whole nother style of learning and a way of expressing yourself, and you are intelligent. It's just in a different way. And so I started to just double down on that. And I would say it wasn't all fun. I mean, I'm not going to kid anyone. I mean, when you're spending 8 hours a day in the bottom of a parkade in a high rise when they're just excavating and you're on water control for 8 hours straight. It's not fun.
Yeah.
um,
It smells a lot like work.
it smells a lot like work. I've never looked at my clock so many times within a 20-minute period to realize that only 20 minutes had gone by. Um, but I just decided that it was a school of hard knocks, and I worked my butt off. Took on every opportunity I possibly could to move up in that industry, and I wanted to be a superintendent. From a superintendent, I got distracted by didn't make it to super. I was about to go to school to be a carpenter, and I got hired by a company that specialized in window installation in high rises. And I worked for that founder for 10 years. And I ended up running that business in a partnership type role with him. And we had about 100 employees, did about 5 to 8 high rises a year, or at the same time, kind of continuously had them going.
Yeah. So
Um,
when you're working the high rises, I mean, safety is a priority. It's
yes,
number one, right?
yeah, I mean, theoretically, yes. But I'm gonna be honest, like when I first started in the industry, safety was a hard hat, steel toe boots, go get your job done. Safety wasn't the first thing that came to mind when you were about to do a task. It was how do I do it better and faster than the person next to me? And how to, and I mean, that's just human nature at the end of the day. We train our children to kind of push back that past that fear of safety. And, the monkey bars on a playground might be scary at first, but hey, you can do it. Go try it, go push. So then you're in this work environment and you're geared or wired to just go and do it, get it done. And then it just comes to, are you scared of something or are you not? Are you scared of heights or are you not? And then that's gonna put you're at more risk or less. Anyways, long story shorter, I as I moved up the ranks, safety started to change in the industry. So it went from hard hat, steel toe boots to more of a compliance-based safety. And I remember working on one of the a job site, or our crews went to a job site with one of the largest general contractors of Canada, and they said you can't set foot on site without a safety program, and you have to prove you're following it. And then they come to me and I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like we have a safety program, but they're saying that's not good enough. So I guess I got to hire a safety person to explain this to me. And then you got to get 55-year-old window installers to start filling out paperwork, which they haven't done in 20 years. And so like it just felt like everything was like it's like what is happening here? I'm not getting paid without paperwork now? What world am I living in? I thought I was in construction. But the biggest catalyst for me was actually I started to learn a lot more about the risk and a lot more about safety holistically as I went through this journey. So a year into that, I started to, and when you're running a company, naturally you're losing sleep over risk, right? Risk to me prior to that was, do we have enough workers on site? Are we going to make money on this project? But then all of a sudden, I'm starting to lose sleep over the fact that we might have a 20-year-old window installer on the side of the building where their fall protection training expired 3 months ago, and we just don't know. Or what happens if something happens and we don't have the paperwork in place? We didn't train the crews properly. We can't protect the business or ourselves. I'm personally liable, is what I learned. And so all of a sudden, we're starting to put all this process and procedure in place, which is great. I'm bought into the mindset behind it and how it breaks up complacency and actually makes workers stop and think. But then about a year and a half into that, I'm starting to call bullshit. I'm like, wait a minute, this feels like we're doing all this paperwork, but yet I actually like it's all paper, it's on site. I don't know if we're actually protected. I don't have access to that. Our
Mm,
safety team can't tell me where I'm protected, but now we're spending millions of dollars on safety process. As I look at the forms that are coming in, they're being pencil whipped. Nobody's actually paying attention to it. So it feels like it's just smoke and mirrors and we're just spending a bunch of money for nothing. And then we had an incident where somebody dropped a steel L angle from the 14th floor of a building, almost killed someone. Holes everywhere in our safety process that we wouldn't have known about for months.
right.
And I personally got written up and that's what triggered me to go further into safety and figure out, hey, for the first time in my career, I thought software could solve a problem for our crews in the field.
Right.
Um, and that's kind of where safety was born. It was sparked.
Yeah. Well, man, that's a great story in the fact that you've obviously lived it and you realize the consequences of what we're talking about here. And I've talked several times about the whole pencil whipping dilemma that's been going on in construction for years. With you can talk about gaming the system, those kind of things, and that happens more often than not. I find a lot when I on the technology side, being in on the payroll part of things, where you're trying to collect, payroll time cards digitally, those types of things. Well, Lord knows that's been pencil whipped to death over the years. Guys throwing a few hours over to here and throwing a few hours over to here, even though they may not have worked those because they know they got budget left, which is one of my biggest, pet peeves ever. It's like, guys, I know you didn't put 6 hours on that. We haven't even started that yet, but nice
Right.
try. Yeah, and but those are the kind of things that happen. So we start talking about pencil whipping, and so safety is even more important that you don't pencil whip it. But guys out in the field or girls out in the field, whatever, they're out there and they really don't feel like they have the time for this. And so, to your point, you had a lot of paper, right? And you had a lot of, I'll probably say siloed information, here, there, everywhere, but wasn't really valid because um, it's not really, what is it? The accountability chain was broken.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is safety has started to shift from protecting the worker to protecting the business, and the pendulum has swung too far. And I think I saw that in my company. And I saw, yeah, the knee-jerk reaction, and we forget why we're doing it. And that incident shone a light on the fact that it was theater and it was protecting the business. But if you're not actually protecting the worker, when you dig deeper and pull back the layers, you realize the business isn't protected. But I think I like to base everything in reality. And the reality, and this happens a lot when you're the gap between the office and the field. The field is very realistic. There is no room for theoretical sometimes or the nice to have or the ideal. It's just this is the truth. This is reality. In the office, you kind of get lost in some of the noise of it all. And I think the reality is this, is when you're talking about pencil whipping a form, the reality is if you were to ask, if you were to take a worker naturally and say, hey, go do that task, go build me this set of stairs, they're not going to naturally say, hey, I got to stop and I got to fill out this paperwork and I got to think about the safety things or the consequences before or all of this stuff. That's not a natural instinct. And human beings are wired for time to value, right? And so what we're doing with safety is we're putting a blocker for their time to value. And so a lot of people get lost in this innovation around how can we make it safer for them? How can we introduce something that eliminates this risk and does something really cool and create? The reality is that worker hates paperwork.
Yeah, they hate it. Well, I
That's
mean,
just the starting point,
yeah, but I think the
which you
guy,
got to
and I
solve.
think that yeah, that is the truth. Okay, so again, office side, the compliance side of the world over here, maybe not knowing exactly what's going on in the field, but you got a guy. Okay, I'll just, guy my age, I've been out in the field for a long, long time. I've been doing it for a long, long time. And I know if I'm building a set of stairs, I'm probably going to need, some scaffold, something that I'm going to need up underneath it so that I'm not trying to, hang off the edge or anything. Everything has to be from a safe position. It has to be done first. There's a setup that has to happen. And my opinion of this piece of paper that you've just now put in front of me is like, I already know this stuff. You know what I mean? You should know it. You know what I mean? And so therefore I provide as little detail as possible as to what was set up, what was done. I've got a stair hole. Yeah, I did. I put safety railings around it, right? Did I take pictures of it? Maybe, maybe not. Did I have that availability? And that was, that was even back in the day, my day when I'm older guys like me.
Yeah, I mean, I think here's the thing. Complacency is the biggest killer out there, and complacency is a natural occurrence that happens with any human being. And so, although somebody has done something so many times and they feel like they know how to do it the safe way, they don't. And the hard thing about that is complacency is putting that barrier to time to value. Or sorry, disruption of complacency is what you have. Like if you put a form in or a stopgap to make them stop and think, it is something that is unnatural, which is good. We want to create that. But the reality is, if you just put something in front of them that is designed to be difficult, like paperwork, a lot of the times it's catch-all. Here's all the things you could possibly be coming across for health and safety and fill it out. By the time they're done, they're just like, I want to get through this. Three-quarters of stuff on this form has nothing to do with the task at hand. And that they're just checking the box that the paperwork's done, and it has zero impact on complacency, and it's creating more complacency. I come from the mindset of paperwork is now hard. Let's acknowledge that. Let's forget about all the innovation around health and safety for a second, and let's start by meeting the worker and the industry where they are, make that process as simple as possible for them, and so that one, you get more buy-in. Oh, this was super easy. This is way easier than paper. Then you start to, or whatever else, it might not be paper. There's tons of systems out there that are just difficult to use for field workers because they're designed for somebody sitting in front of a desktop computer.
Yeah,
And then once you get that buy-in,
somebody that's used to working with that kind of medium. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
exactly. And then you can start to trickle in innovation. Meet them where they are, get them to buy in and adopt, and then all of a sudden you can start to introduce how can you create a value exchange between the worker and safety, where they actually start reaching for safety like they reach for any other tool. Because you don't have to tell a carpenter when to use a hammer or a skill saw, but yet every single day they show up on work to work, they're like, oh, it's 8 a.m. I got to do my hazard assessment or PTP or whatever. Oh, it's Friday. I got to do my toolbox talk at this time. It's like, imagine if that was scheduled for when they had to use any other tool. Like, oh, it's Friday. Got to use my skill saw today. You'd be like, they have no idea what they're doing. So you got to make it more of an intuitive process where they understand why it is that they're stopping and thinking about the task before, understand how complacency can set in, understand how the system that they're using can help them not just with safety, but make them better at their job. And then once that value exchange happens, you start to see a buy-in that is unstoppable because the problem with most things is if somebody on the other side sees no value, they're just going to go through the motions every time. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter what it is.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So Salus, kind of generated out of this uh, this incident that happened or series of incidents, whatever, however you got to this. So how does Salus help with all this?
Yeah, I think what we kind of did differently is one is I'm not a software guy, so I don't know how software is like I don't know the details of how to build software. My co-founder knows how to do that. But I think the unique aspect is we took a different approach. A lot of construction tech or even software companies, they build software in a different way out of the gates. We took a different approach by like, so I'll give you an example. A lot of companies will build for the buyer, right? Which makes sense. Like, okay, this is the person buying the software. I gotta build for them. So in our example, a lot of our people in our space built for safety professionals, built for executives, built the corporate side of safety, built the dashboards, the reports. And we said, no, we're not going to even have that in our mind. The only thing we're going to start with is how do we actually get a field level worker to interact with software? And we're going to start with a mobile app. And then from there, actually go from a mobile app to how do we get that? Because foremen typically we saw using a mobile app, but the field levels workers wouldn't. How do we get the field level worker to start using it? And then once we got that adoption and we made it so that we could see that there was buy-in, we start to go up to the safety professional, go up to the executive. And the way that we built the architecture of our product around how companies work together on sites and everything, it was a lot more natural and intuitive in the way that the industry worked. So here's an interesting one. Like 2.5 years into us having our company started, we had about 300 customers and we couldn't build a single report or dashboard. Imagine going into a sales call and you can't show any of the flashy lights,
Right.
but they were buying it because the adoption was there. And now today we have over 300,000 workers using the system, and over 50% of those are not just foremen. The foreman is the other like 40%. 50% of those people are actual field level workers who downloaded a mobile app, which I never thought they would do. But
Wow.
they're actually starting to interact with it. They want it. They're taking it with them from company to company. Anyways, it's just interesting when you when you focus on the right things, everyone says the field is not innovative, they won't adopt technology. They're
Yeah.
just waiting for somebody to build something for them.
Yeah. Yeah. They're waiting for something they can engage with, that meets them where they are. And I think that is important. Because I would advise anybody that's making any sort of software that needs to engage, those folks out in the field. That's exactly where to start. Uh,
100%.
where are their pain points? That's the feedback that I get from my current clients. I get feedback like, "Hey, how can we make this so that how can we automate this so I don't have to mess with it that much? Or how can I spend a little bit less time but still get the functionality out of it? Where can I go?" They're always looking for like, and again, when they say they don't engage with technology, no, they just don't engage with technology that doesn't work. Right. They don't engage with technology that wastes their time or they feel like they're trapped in and they can't, function out of it. So I agree with you.
Easier said than done because the reality is you can start that way, but then every single step you take forward as you start to sell to a business and those executives and the champions that are actually buying your product, their requirements for the product almost contradict what the field needs constantly. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. As you work with bigger companies, what's the first thing construction tech companies hear about? Security, hierarchies, notifications, controls. Every single one of those things, if you don't push back and build it in a different way, will put a barrier between for the field. It makes it harder for the field. Easier for admins, harder for the field.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting how that works. There was a post just today about kind of the same thing where they uh they evaluated some executive leaders, and what the leaders wanted was things like what you're just talking about. Oh, we want security, and we want easier integrations, those types of things. It said nothing. There was no level on there that said anything about employee adoption. It didn't say anything about that. It wasn't even on the list of things that executives wanted. And my response, my comment back to it was specifically, hey, by the way, I don't care what solution you have. There's tons of solutions out there. If you don't have buy-in from the absolute, not just from, you don't have buy-in from the field, the users, the people that are most affected by the product, guess what? You're going to have problems with that product. I don't care how good your integration is. I don't care how good your solutions team is. There are several steps to getting that product from being, at the solutions, person's desk, then into the system and then utilized and giving you some sort of return on investment. And the biggest part of that return on investment is people using the product and being well adept at the product, adopting to the product, making sure that it's working for you to get you the data that you're looking for on that dashboard that you want so badly.
Exactly. And I think I mean, a lot of this falls on IT in my opinion. I think that people have to take more of a realistic approach to some of this stuff. It's not a blanket statement across the board. We care heavily about security and all of the things that they need, but it's not a blanket statement. You cannot have multi-factor authentication in place for field level workers. They just won't use it. And then you question, well, why do you need it in place in the first place? What are they filling out where you actually, or what part of the system that they're accessing where you have that security risk? In reality, it's not there. But if you put that in place, you won't get adoption. At full stop. You just won't, it won't happen, right? And so having to push back and be the true kind of consultant in this process, we're at the tip of the spear of a different frontier in construction tech. The field level workers actually using software. I'll give you an example. If we sign up a 5,000 person company, 95, 99% of construction tech companies, maximum out of 5,000 people, maybe they're getting 500 people using the software, max, right? Which would be good. Us, we have 4,500 people that will interact with the software, 500 won't. And so that's insane, right? And then you think about, oh, how is this adoption and implementation process going to go? We actually implement and get adoption 10 times faster than the 500 people because of the way our system's built, right?
Ease of use.
Ease of use, and make sure that it's not, you don't have to navigate through a bunch of noise to get to your value, right?
I get you.
Purpose built for that individual that's interacting with it. If you're in the field, are you a worker or are you a trade worker? Are you a manager? Like each one of those experiences has to be different. It doesn't, when I say it has to be easy to use and you shouldn't need to download a mobile app, doesn't mean some people don't have to have a mobile app, right? It means if you force everyone through a mobile app, you won't get adoption,
I get you.
right? So it's exciting, it's interesting, it's very difficult at some points when you have to deal with some of the things that we deal with. I mean, we still have to support an iPhone 7,
Yeah.
right? Because
Right.
that's the reality of what's being used in the field. We just retired iPhone 6 because in our system we saw that no more iPhone 6s are being used.
I got you. I got you. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's difficult. Uh, because again, there's those factors that are involved, right? The older the product that are probably out there being afforded by, said worker, especially at the employee level. And again, at the foreman level, a lot of times they're handed a phone from
Yep,
the
yep.
company, but at an
Performance, no
employee,
problems.
yeah, foreman's no problems. But at an employee level, seen that happen where companies wanted the employee to enter kind of their own time, or do a clock in, clock out. Well, they had an old
Yep,
phone,
yep.
and it doesn't necessarily have the bandwidth or the memory width that maybe was needed, those types of
To
things. And
download the app.
to download,
Yeah.
and it takes forever, and they're sitting there looking at it, going, "Oh, this thing's never going to work for me."
Or they don't know their Apple ID or whatever it is.
Right, right,
Yeah.
yeah, the struggle's real.
The struggle is real, and it's not something like, look here, the reality is that it's not like it was 7 years ago. When we first started 7 years ago, smartphones were just starting to get adopted in the field, right? It was before that, it was the mic phones, those tough flip phones, whatever, you could drop it from 20 stories into concrete, chip it up, and it would still work.
Yeah,
Everybody, no matter how old they are, has a smartphone now, and they know how to use it for social media, whatever it is, FaceTiming their grandkids or their whoever or their own kids, whatever it is. It's just having to meet them where they are. So if you create a process where it's feels like they're interacting with social media when they sign up and everything else, which they know how to do, you're going to be okay. But if you try and go towards more of a B2B software experience, they will stop dead in their. I get stopped dead in my tracks. I would just don't learn that way. I shut down. If you have to read something or anything, I just shut down. I go to where, what do I click on?
Yeah.
How can I click my
Yeah.
way out of this?
Yeah. What best button is the way to get me out of where I'm at? Yeah. I get that.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's so,
yeah,
what's funny is we're just talking about the entry point here too. We could talk 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes. We could probably talk an hour just on entry of how do we get this implemented, and then how do we get this adopted, right? That's just it. We haven't even touched on what does this software do? You know,
right.
how does it help? Right? We
Yeah,
haven't even talked about that yet. And so
yeah,
again, when you start talking about any software, I don't care what you're rolling out, but you get past those first two, and then you've got that third, like, well, okay, now I've got good implementation, right? Got the teams, it's up and rolling. Basically, I've got fairly good adoption. Now, what do I need out of this software, right? Across the board.
yeah. And I think a lot of people get lost in that. We did too. I mean, you get lost in the reason why you're not winning a deal, right? And oh, you have this and this and this and this and this and this, and then all of a
Edge
sudden you
cases.
build more of this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you take a step back after a few years and you're like, our system is so wide, it's a full-on platform, but is it deep? And then you start to look at the data and where is it actually being used? And then if you do the right thing, you just start leaning into the reality of it. Like, are you going to force somebody to try and use the portion of your product that's being used by 1%? Or do you put more resources into making the portion that's being used by 80% better, easier, more exciting, and start naturally pulling them into these other areas that tie into that? And once you start doing that, that's fun. It's incredible. And it's okay to say no if you can't do something. You can't do it all. You got to, in my opinion, specialization and focus is the key to everything. Because if you try and do it all, humans can't do it all. No industry in the world, no vertical, there's a
Mhm.
company that does it all. It's
Right.
impossible.
Yeah, and it'll never happen. I mean, let's
Never
just be
happen.
honest. That'll never happen. There is no one, easy button. This one's gonna do it all for us. I mean, the early ERPs, remember these things when they kept coming in going, oh, no, 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 no. You don't need all that. All you need is this, right? This is the only
Exactly.
system you're ever gonna need. It's you're gonna be able to do everything you need to out of this. And then the
Salesforce shouldn't exist if that was right. Right?
So
Right?
but the
Like,
complexity of it all was just like, oh wow. You're never gonna be able you couldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It was so complex. It was like, okay, how do I get over to here, over to there? And then you found out that, oh well, we had three different software engineers working on this. So I got a little bit different code kind of over here and it made it this way. And then they bolted on this product over here. It's never gonna
It's
happen,
it's
folks.
never going to happen, and it's the simplest thing. Here's a perfect example. Hilti, Milwaukee, incredible companies. Carpenters don't buy their hammers from either of those companies. We're talking about a hammer.
Yeah. I gotta tell you where I bought
There,
my hammer
there's
from. Yeah.
companies that build hammers better than anyone else, and that's all they do, and
Yeah.
they sell hammers.
I gotta no, I get it. So this is classic because the first day I stepped onto a job site, framing houses, right? I was just a young punk, didn't know a lot. I mean, I'd built a few barns when I was a kid. My dad, I had an old hand-me-down Est-Wing, framing hammer,
Yeah,
you know.
that's my first too.
So about 6 weeks in, my arm was just killing me, right? And all the other guys were using these weird looking Japanese framing hammers. It's called a Dogyu framing hammer, and it looks weird. It looks like a duck, right? It's still a 20-ounce hammer, but for some reason it's balanced in the handle, and that's the way that it was done. And my boss was like, "Go get you one of these." He goes, and so I ordered one, put it on my tool belt. I won't use another hammer ever again.
Yeah, probably a $300 hammer.
It was quite expensive for me at the time, but I'm just telling you right now, it made all the
Yeah,
difference,
it's
right?
huge.
for when you and we were doing a lot of, hand nailing and things like that because my boss was old school, didn't want us using, too many accidents with the guns, right? So he's like, no, this is what we're going to use, especially when you're up here framing rafters and all those kind of things. You're in tight spaces. This is it's the easiest thing is. And I'm, man, it's great. But to your
Exactly.
point, I wouldn't have gone to Hilti and found that hammer. I wouldn't have gone to Milwaukee and found the hammer. They make other things, but again, there are people that do really, really good things with just one product, and it does that one thing very,
Yeah,
very well.
exactly. Or and it doesn't have to be a single product like Milwaukee, Hilti, DeWalt. All these companies do a various variety of power tools very well.
Mhm.
But it's a focus, right?
Right.
They're not going into another area. And anytime you see that, I mean, companies are always trying to expand revenue, and I understand why they're trying to branch out. Um, the reality is they're just not going to do it as good as someone else, right? And so the all-in-one solution doesn't exist. And a lot of times what we hear is like, well, we want somebody to not have to go to so many different places. And it's like, well, in
Hear
reality,
that?
human beings are kind of like that. You don't wish your tape measure was also your hammer and your saw. You got a toolbox for that, and you're going to pull out the right tool for the right time because your mind shifts focus on what it needs to do. Um, but that's balance too. You also don't want a bunch, especially in software, a bunch of point solutions, right?
Yeah. Well, that
You
is
need the platforms, you need the point solutions that tie into the
right.
platforms.
I think, like a bad idea is a restaurant at a landfill. So I'm not going to go to the landfill and then stop at the restaurant there. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a bit
Exactly.
extreme, but I'm just saying that's exactly what, I know that we want to reduce the number of we'll say clicks or to reduce the number of spaces that we go. I am all for a simplified tech stack, right? Because uh, I think that is um, probably the best way, especially for like mid-sized contractors, folks like that, to really kind of get a good gauge. Because a lot of times they've gone out, they bought the shiniest object, those kind of things, and thought, okay, this should do it, and then that didn't do it, and then they went out and bought another piece. Oh, this could bolt onto that somehow, and then they had this cumbersome, investment of tools that, yeah, well, we could have used that, but it didn't quite work for here, and they just didn't guide it right, right? It wasn't, maybe they weren't informed enough or whatever, but they kind of went out and thought they needed this tech, that tech, and then maybe they really didn't, and maybe they just didn't have the right, people in the right seat to kind of guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, I think construction is just in the early innings of understanding software. I mean, in general, every company is kind of still in the early innings as things like AI come out, and you're always then reinventing or rethinking about everything you just did. But I think in general, the mindset should be um, if you really want to be innovative, you constantly have to be testing, but you don't always have to be changing, right? It doesn't mean you test this thing and then, oh, all of a sudden you throw everything out. Test, iterate, consolidation, right? Constantly, if you're using the same software for 30 years, it better be a ridiculously innovative software that kind of reinvents itself constantly, or there's probably something that's better out there. Or parts of it could be made more efficient or whatever it may be. So one of the things I always challenge is like, how do you make sure you're always using the most cutting edge and impactful thing for your business? Open up a testing area. Make sure you're constantly testing innovative things that even if it challenges your existing tech stack, and I say this to our existing customers, don't just look at us. Look at other software out there that you think can compete with us. Force us, Salus, to be the cutting edge and most innovative and impactful safety management software in the market by holding us accountable to that.
Yeah.
And then do the same thing with everything else.
And competition has always created the best products. You know what I mean? It always has, and it always will, right? If you got somebody that's, eating your lunch, you're either going to fall by the wayside or you're going to step up. One of the two. That's just got to happen. And I don't care what business you're in. You're a software business, you're in the construction business, you're in the banking business, whatever that is. Somebody that is, beating you to the punch on something, whether it's a new technology or whatever, you're going to have to start to take and evaluate. Okay, wait a minute. Did we miss the mark on this, and how can I be better? I think there's an interesting point inside of that conversation, which is, a lot of these tech companies or startups will start something and then they're going to get bought out, and then the idea gets changed. Somehow it gets, okay, how can we sell this product and just use it for what it is right now? And then that that
Innovation
that
dies.
innovation stage just kind of loses steam somehow, because maybe the bean counters start going, hey, well, we're still making money on it. Why would we do that? Maybe the investment in that may not serve us very well.
Yeah, I mean, any product that you're buying, you have to look at what incentivizes that company, right? The company. If it's a founder-led company, it's very different than a private PE-owned company versus a company that's owned by, another strategic industry-leading software in that space. It's all different. It's all going to be different reasons why they have that software, what that contributes to the business success, what their vision is for that software. And so but that's different. Every company has different needs. Like
Yeah.
if you're looking for a fast moving software that's constantly innovating, great, probably go for a founder led software
Yeah.
business because they're going to be pushing the limits. But some of these, like you said, a big ERP, maybe they don't need that,
Yeah. Well, I
right?
always, I always, if I'm advising on and folks about, what their selection is, that's one of the things I look at immediately is, is this company going to grow with you? Can they scale with you? Will they continue to scale with you? And I know you get a lot of promises up front, but there's a lot of times where you end up like those big ERP things where you get them and then you can't go anywhere else because you've just invested, I mean, millions of dollars
Yeah,
into these
you're not going
things,
to change that. It's a
and
big bet.
they're not going to change for you either, right? You're kind of stuck with what you get, and the new iterations that come out. Well, this is it, you know. The suggestion box is over here, but we didn't really look at it because we had a bunch of other things in its place. But
Yeah, see, it's interesting you say that because as I've gone through the life cycle of our business, it evolves from you're very influenced by what your customers are sharing with you to you can't listen to everything your customers are telling you because you will spin your wheels
you'll be
and
inundated.
you have to transition into leading the industry and where it needs to go. And then the companies that are buying your software have to believe in where you're going. And I would suggest to any company buying a software, unless you're truly buying new software in a vertical that is like you're really trying to innovate and they're like very new, you're going to have a very big influence and you're going to see your impact in the product roadmap immediately. I would say outside of that, do not buy a software based on what you think you can get them to build because that's custom software and it turns into a dumpster fire because it's not scalable. It's a mess. So do not buy a software based on what you think that you can influence. Buy a software based on the fact that you believe what they have is good and impactful and you believe in where they're going
Yeah.
because
And you'd be
it's
surprised the
just a
number of times. I
yeah.
don't know, Ed, you probably had it happen to you too, but the number of times that folks had asked, you know, is this what about customization? What can I do customization wise? And it's some IT director or, CIO, whatever, well, we're different, right?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
need it this way, and we need it to look this way. And there gets that point of, just unrealistic expectation, especially with some of these providers
Yeah.
or customers, I guess.
I think what they're describing is flexibility. And the more intuitive and nuanced software that's been built is a lot more flexible without being customized. And so, but it's a flexibility based on how the product can be used, but it's also flexibility on the way that you look at solving problems. So you need a partner that's going to challenge you and make you think differently. Because part of the problem is that we're taking an analog process and thinking about it in an analog way. Well, this is how we did it. It's like, yeah, but how you did it was paper.
Hmm.
And the problems you had, and
There's a
even
lot
the
of
things you were
flexibility.
solving.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the problem, the root cause of why you're even doing paper, and then can we solve it in a different way? You say
Yeah.
you want all these notifications. We're not pushing back because we can't do it. We're pushing back because I think if you have 45 notifications set up for one person, they're going to lose their mind.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it sounds more like what you need is actually a more intuitive report where they can actually have a pulse on where their risk is versus a notification every 20 minutes
Yeah.
telling them they have to do something because I
Oh,
can tell you they're gonna silence their phone.
yeah. Yeah, and you have to be able to tell people that. It's like, I think that's a bad idea for you. You know what I mean? Because you say your day is already terrible, right? But wait until that phone is sitting there dinging off ding, ding, and you're sitting there going, wait a minute, okay, too many notifications. How do I turn it off? Well, that's just what you just asked me for. Be careful what you ask for, right? Be careful what you
Exactly.
wish for. Um,
Exactly. You over-engineer into a corner where you can't. One person in the company all of a sudden is the only one that knows how to set up and run the system, and you're in
yeah,
trouble.
you bottleneck it. When you say you need, and I think that all comes down to, right, that implementation period when you're rolling out new software, I don't know, whatever it is. There are steps that have to be taken. First of all, you've got to get the executive sponsorship. You've got to get those folks in the room to understand you guys are leading the kind of directive. And then there needs to be that one person that's in charge, but not the one person that handles everything. It's the one person that says, this was the directive, let's stay on track, right? And then you have a whole group, really, truly, of what I'll call product champions and folks that then go, hey, okay, I get it. And I see how it applies to my area. And I get it. I see how it applies to my area. And I think the big mistake that a lot of companies make is they forget some of those pieces, or those pieces aren't quite big enough, or maybe they're too big for one person and they don't distribute well enough, and they don't develop that team, or the executive is one executive's over here, it doesn't really affect me, or I think again they forget that value sometimes, because they get busy with their day, they get busy with the business of building things, and they're like, man. Somebody said to me the other day, I think the biggest mistake that we make with software is it's not in the asset column. It's still in the overhead column. And I thought,
In construction,
yeah, in construction, it's not considered an asset yet. It's not something that
yeah, it's overhead on top of the person versus how do you, it's instead of like efficiency to empower the person.
I thought that was interesting.
Should be under them, not over them.
Right. Yeah, it should be part of again, it should be a tool in the tool belt,
Tool,
right?
100%,
100%.
100%. And I think what you said is I personally think biggest single, the single biggest mistake the industry makes when they're buying software is it turns into perfection over progress. They get into solutioning mode and they get into scope creep, whether they realize it or not. And then all of a sudden they're so far down this rabbit hole of, well, it can't do all this stuff. Let's just wait. Or they don't buy anything, or they're whatever it is. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Let's focus on progress. You're doing this. And we had a company that was submitting 100,000 paper forms a month. And we were getting stuck at the beginning over this semantic stuff of like, can it do this? It's like, hold on, let's take a breath. Let's solve that first. If I just solve even 70% of that, is that good?
Right.
And they're like, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. And so
And you need to
we
be able
rolled
to do
forward.
it 2-3% at a time, right? You want to see that. I always love that. This can give you 30% gain, or this can give you 20% gain, or return on investment, or whatever. How do you get to that 20? Because your 20 it's not snap of the fingers and there's your 20. Guess what? It's 2% here. It's 3% here. Let's break down this process. Kind of like you said, paper's easy. Paper has been a great medium, right? It's been great up till now because paper didn't really have a lot of rules, right? It didn't,
Paper's still great for
it's
many reasons.
right. It's still great for many reasons, but I'm saying when you start to digitize a process, which is when we start to think about it, when we talk about this, It is. Digitization is going to be the, I'll say, ticket to entry into future construction projects. Kind of like you ran into. You have to have a safety program and you have to document it to tell me that you're following it, right? Well, guess what? That even that on paper was tough to do at the time. Now you want to digitize that whole thing because soon enough, it won't be very, very long when that digitization process goes, okay, send me that file and show me how that works because I need to check my AI needs to check your AI.
Yeah, I think the biggest you nailed something there where the paper conversation. I think a lot of people look at paper and they're like, ah, can't believe you're still doing paper. And then they go and revolutionize the way paper process is done, and they forget there's a reason why paper is still being done. There's a lot of stuff that is easy about paper. And so, yeah, there's some stuff that sucks about paper, and it's, yeah, it definitely outweighs a lot of the pros. But let's not throw out the fact that me, you, and four other people can be standing in a room together with a piece of paper. We can all review it and sign off on it without having to log into anything,
Yeah, that's true.
right? So what we took the approach of is how do we make that experience in software to be as easy as paper? For all of the areas that paper is, like paper is a competitor of ours. How do we actually make it so that you're sitting in a room together and it feels like just as easy to sign that digital form as it is the piece of paper, right? Does it feel like there's a big barrier to log in? Well, fuck, let's break that barrier down. And then once you meet them there, and then they're like, shit, this is as easy as paper, then you start to build on that and introduce all this crazy innovation stuff because they're right there. But if you try and throw all this innovation in, it's too much.
It gets
It's
lost.
way too much.
That's the
And it gets
noise that
lost.
that's the noise that you're talking about,
The
especially.
noise.
Yeah, that's the noise. That's the
There's
noise.
so much noise out there, man. There's so much noise, even more with AI. Everyone's always like, oh, well, with AI now, they shouldn't even have to fill out any forms. The AI can just do all that for them. And it's like, no, that for one, that it removes the entire lists aren't going away. The way you do a checklist can change slightly, but the fundamental of a checklist is that human beings can't remember all the shit that they have to remember.
That is correct.
A pilot will not go away from a checklist, right? You have to have something that stops them. Okay, did you remember this? Did you remember this thing? Because we cannot afford for them to have a bad day and not do it and
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah.
Because we will.
You still need the intuitive nature of the human in front of that thing to go, okay, I see all that, but we're missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got all that done. Thank you for reminding me. But maybe there's this other thing that I need to get done over here too. By the way, it wasn't on your list. Totally
Can
get
it
it.
break up complacency in a different way? Can it do something? But at the same time, you don't want them sitting there for 45 minutes breaking up complacency because they're going to be like, it took me 10 minutes to fill out the paperwork. Now you're retraining me on everything to do with safety every single time I do this.
Right.
I hate this.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate it. Yeah.
Right?
Man, we could go for hours. I know we could, because we've, I say, chewed a lot of the same dirt in these areas. And so, last but not least, I want to know, just let the folks know out there, how do they get a hold of you? How do we, get a look at, Salus and those types of things?
Yeah, we'll share the website links and everything. I mean, we're on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, salussafety.io. We also have a free AI tool that we launched specifically for safety professionals. It's just a tool for them to do their day-to-day tasks that they have. And it's the Salus Safety Assistant that I'll share that out as well. No cost. Just go use it. It's saving hours and hours and hours for safety professionals on the mundane stuff that they have to do every day. And they don't have to buy a platform because sometimes that can be hard to get a platform purchase past the business. This is more just here's a tool, go solve your problems. Spend more time with your family versus building procedures.
Right. Yeah. Get started on something. Again, that's that
Something.
incremental step, right? This here's a good first step.
Progress,
Start there.
progress,
Yeah.
progress, progress,
Well, good.
progress.
Well, thank you so much for being with me today, Gabe. Like I said, we could probably go for hours, talk about this stuff, two guys talking construction, but I appreciate your time. And now that we've got one under our belt, I'll probably reach back out to you in 2026, see how things are going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a
All
great
right.
conversation.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks everybody in the content exec world. We're going to be coming back. I got a couple more episodes coming out next week. So I'm going to have to start doing 2 or 3 of these a week, I guess, because I've got so many folks coming on. But until next time, we'll see you later, everybody. Be safe out there.